So mine is about essential understanding, number 5. And this is the legislation of 501. And just in case a parent asks you, I had it saved. I did have a parent ask once why we learn about American Indians or Native Americans. So if someone likes those words right there, there's the reference for it too, if you want me to email it to you. And then this is probably one of the wordier ones, and I won't go into much detail on them, but there are many federal policies put into place that have affected them in the past, and there is some overlap on this too, not only in the years, but also in some events that have happened. It depends on the tribe. And like it said, some conflicted. Of course, the start was first listed as 1492, and the treaty making actually went way farther than 1778 and 1871, but that's just what they did for the lawmakers to make them happy. And where they got moved in the reservations the first time, some tribes, especially like the Salish, I know for sure were moved 3 times in this time period. The first time they were in Washington, then they moved to Idaho, then they moved them 2 times in Montana to where they are. And then the reorganization time period, that's where, in the case of some tribes, they went together and either an appointed leader or they just grabbed someone, whoever they thought would be easier to talk to and spoke English, would get together and they would talk about different policies. Some of them were agreed on, some of them were not. And the termination relocation, because some of them got moved again. And a lot of it was when the farming was going on, when we wanted their farmland, and I'm sure my family in Vida were on Assiniboine land, or at least at one time it was. And then the self-determination period from 1975. And that just gives even more detail, so I'll just skip that. It's just basically telling you the same stuff other than the sovereignty of tribes. These are the 2 activities that I picked. On the Historical Society, it has quite a few of them. There's a 7 through 12 one that I didn't do put the link on because I didn't feel like I was confident enough. Those of you who know me know I'm very limited in my artistic skills and in describing things, so I didn't put that one on there. But I've done a similar activity with my kids a few times where we did storytelling. And this is a storytelling one too, but it also has some more details in there. At their time, before they were writing in the alphabet, they did their time period from winter to winter is what they did. So that's why you'll hear it called winter counts. And so these are printables right here. I could not get that link to hold on. I tried several times. And those are a few other materials that I saved. And this is one, it wasn't part of it, but I added on to it. So I can click on this link right here. And this is for the reservations. If any of you have been on this website, it's maybe about 20 years old. Is it going to show up? Or it doesn't go off this? I don't have a smart board, so.
You have to pull it over.
So how would I pull it over?
Yeah, pull that, grab that top tab that you're just on right here.
Okay.
And then drag it over.
Drag it
Keep
over.
dragging. There you go. And then let go.
Okay.
There you go.
And so if you haven't been on this site, this is Montana Tribes. It will split up like the different essential understandings. It also has the learning activities, and I just copied off the link from there. So one thing, especially when they're learning about the reservations and they don't know where they're at, this is one. So if I just click, for example, on Crow, I can see if it matches up right there. And I keep going all the way through, or else I can switch it around. I can also, let's see if I'll put one, see if it stays right now. And then you can do it as a check. And it also says with the Little Shell tribe being as new as they are, that just tell them they're in Great Falls. Their headquarters is actually the mall. They don't have, like what you would say, their own tribal buildings. As of last month, I did some calling with OPI. So this is an activity that's a little more hands-on than finding the reservations in Montana. Let's see, so, and I X office? Or?
I think if you click on the slide back over on the PowerPoint, it should, right there, yeah. There you go.
So that one was that. And actually, I skipped over something, so let's see. So one of the things that had you do was to get deeper into the federal policy is every reservation except for the Little Shell, they had a brief history, and for that you can draw some pictographs for that. And I've had I've done this a few times, but not with public policy. But this was what I would call first their practice page right here. And they would start their story at the head, and they would come back around. We did it kind of for our own storytelling. And then to make it look a little bit more like paper, I took, or like hide, I took brown paper, wadded up in a baseball, and soaked it in water overnight, and then I spread it out, and it does give you little indentations. Unfortunately, my cat is sick. I had an example and got sick on it, so I don't have ones for you. But it does create a nice brown one, and it's been maybe 3 or 4 years since I've done it, but the kids really enjoy it. The only thing I say is colored pencils didn't go very well with it. Markers go a lot better. But they start at the top and they tell their story going around. They don't go in the middle. And they have a link that, to me, even when I held it up to myself, is very hard to read. But if you go to the Historical Society, they do have a few in the archives that you can take a look at some letters. And I couldn't get it to show up in the PowerPoint at all, but I'll pass it around if anyone wants to see it. I think someone might have had like a piece or two of it before on that. So when I've done the storytelling, I know it's not necessarily hitting in number 5. At first what I did with my classes is some of them were like, I don't know how to tell a story. Well, you can tell me a story, can't you? And here were some examples of pictures that they used to create their story. Of course, if you're doing like going over tribal policy, that's a little bit different. They didn't have a sample of that up, but this is something I got years ago from a teacher, I think at Wolf Point or Pop or something like that. If that helps, go for that. And they fill in the words with the pictures. I always said with my kids too, I want you to be creative, and usually at the point where I've done this, they know I'm challenged in that area, that they can draw better than I can, and they can use their creativity. So they also want you to show, so let's see if I can slide another link. I think this one I can close up now. No. Okay. So this was the other PowerPoint we had. Uh-oh. Let's see. So then I click onto this. They give you a link right here for those that don't know what a pictograph looks like. And there are some very bright and colorful ones. Let's see. So you could use it as history and saying in the early times. And with that being Rosebud County, all of these are Montana ones. You know, some of them you can go through the geography, especially with our younger ones, like, where's Rosebud County? We're really close to it. And there's a Crow one right there. And also some of them have beading in there. I never got to see any of these in person, unfortunately, But these came from the Historical Society. So these were ones they said if you were stuck, their beading would also tell you a story. They weren't just for looks, and it mattered on the tribe. Different colors meant different things as they made their stories. So that was another way they did storytelling. And there it is as their clothing. And this is to show them at first that the reservations that we have aren't the same. This is what they looked at around the late 1800s, 1900s, before we started to move them. And so you'll see, like, for example, there's common hunting ground that it was thought that they all shared, and that some of the tribes were split. Like, for example, the Assiniboine and the Sioux are together in the Fort Peck Reservation, and they weren't at that time. Also the Pend-Oreille and Salish weren't together. And the Blackfeet and Gros Ventre are a little bit, but not in the same reservation. And here's some more. Someday, it's my sister living in Helena. I should really go and see this stuff, but I have not. But people are quite talented in their drawings. So that was a way they said to tell a story. So if you go on the Historical Society link, there are a lot of projects to do. They have trunks, but you need to give them about a year's notice that you want one, because they're backlogged at least a year. And also the wolf one, they only do during the winter months. As respect to those tribes, some of them you only tell stories about the wolves during the winter months, so they won't lend them out in the spring or in the fall. So I told you my presentation would be very short. I'll give you each a buffalo hide, and then another adaptation I thought too that a person could do. This is one that OPI gave us. I had one, but someone enjoyed it so much that I don't have it anymore. But this talks about Jim Thorpe, and how this can apply is he was one during the boarding school time at first. He hit 5, and his parents did want him to go, and he had a twin brother. And what ended up happening is at the first place that he was at, his twin brother died because the health conditions were really poor back there, but he had a close relationship. So then he was disappointed. He decided after his brother died, and anyone can imagine, he was depressed and still tried to study really hard. Then he had another family thing happen where he went home and he ran home, and they sent him back farther away so he wouldn't try to come back. And this was his parents. And then later he did some of the boarding schools were to trade you in certain fields, which actually the treaty said their schools should be that way, but he was one that was thinking of being an engineer. So that's how he ended up at Carlisle. And that's where he was an athlete before, but you could also take a book, and this one I could see people creating quite the story of that. So does anyone have any questions before I get a few things out for you? So if you are interested in doing a reservation one, the little shell one was 80 pages, so I didn't print it out. But if you were one that was going to do the treaty policy, OPI has them all broken up by reservations. So I printed those off if anyone was interested in that. Some of them were with public policy, but other things were how it affected people, like with illness and things like that. So, do you have any questions so far? So I have extras of these. The copy machine went crazy today when I was printing them off. So if you want an extra copy, help yourself. You could either do, if you want to do a public policy one, or you could kind of do a story of your life, like I have had kindergarten through second grade kids do in the past. I know it doesn't really fit into essential understandings, but that's something that I did. So I'll just take these and pass them around. I brought some colored pencils too, and I just threw them in a bag instead of bringing my bucket over. And if any of you want to see these pictures up close, I also printed them off if they help you or if you're interested in them. And so, or you could draw with pen or pencil, whatever you feel. Or you could get together with a partner and work with a partner. It's fine, whatever you want to do. I can see how you do it both ways. That one came off the historical site before I had my own, but it actually didn't turn out as nice as this one. So I took my other one, and if I teach it again, and pitched it. That's what I did. It didn't look so much like.
You know, I did this right when we started this or something, and it just amazes me that it's very discouraged to get that one picture of the years, but they tell you what happened all 4 seasons in the end of the year, and the second thing is, and I read sometimes that I say one picture of the characters or characters.
Yeah, and I'll share the PowerPoint with everybody, both PowerPoints.
What is that little show?
They just got sovereignty, did they?
Got it, recently.
Like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But I don't think, well, they have a few hundred acres, but probably no buildings. Let me look it up. Go to news.
She is around with house and they built that like reservation style house. That's their place.
You have a daughter?
They get 200 acres, but I don't think they have it yet. It says shall acquire. And there are 5,000 minutes around the state. But I don't think they have like a building. Maybe they did have a building. I think they did have a building, but no land. So they must have been paying for the lease or something.
So now are these supposed to be one of these or draw the story of it? This one? Yeah, they're all different. They do story of what happened. There's a lot here. But if you read it to you,
I forgot about that one.
Carl Foster.
I know.
go mostly because he did a lot of the I had a great team. The Prince paid for him to go on and do all these paintings in there. Fabulous. I think he has some a gallery at Great Halls.
Was he a German prince?
Yeah. Yeah, and think about the time period he was not here. Just hunting and yeah, I think mostly he wanted to explore London, and that's why he did such a good job of it. And they're having someone kind of, a real artist that came along and could really do that with pictures. So. We have a book of his art. Place of it where he loves that kind of stuff. And the details are really carry the feathers in there. Oh, I have it with me. She did it. Yeah, she loved it. She can't wait to go next year's festival again. But I didn't realize that they had a boy and a girl running from constantly. They took turns doing that. And the girl carried Morning Star, and the boy carried like and she said, so I said, did you run? And she said, well, I couldn't go faster than the boys because the girl had to stay behind the boy when you were running. So I said, oh, okay. She said, so they did a mile at a time. Made really nice little yeah. It was from Nebraska. And you had kind of sizes of two at a time.
But I wonder if boarding school and then it becomes
I think so too. And she's really a good writer.
Sixth grade?
That periodic table to write with a license plate that represents something about them. It's just gorgeous. Every picture on every letter and wow.
That's really cool. You can do that.
I think I'll ask her permission. And then I think she directed it. I have her present to my class about it, but she's willing to share, willing to do anything, but I always respect her too.
Oh, okay.
So the last one, yeah, she does. I don't care if she would. I want to talk to her.
And I've taken classes before where actually they, but I just some of the guys would say, it was interesting.
She and I were going to do that together. This didn't happen. It happened in my time.
No, I worked on the highway department when they were building that road right by and we found all kinds of schools.
They have really done a nice job of building. they have wait 2 years ago. Somebody in the trading post was talking about things that were traded and why they wanted them. And just, it was really interesting. How much each item was worth.
Really did build that.
It was good. It was interesting.
But I mean, nobody used that.
Yeah. Would that be enough time?
This is all dated 2017, so they're actually very updated. And so I thought I'd see if we could match over to do like a quick print off like this one. And it's still saying 80 pages strong. So I'm like, maybe it will change
Everybody's good to get along.
And some of it came from Mike Jerry's like the specialist. I called him and he wasn't there, but that lady was
In 1851, they had 38 million acres. Is their tractor?
right. So I'm like, mine is really short. They did like that, and I haven't done it for, you know, I grabbed some things and I waited a few years before I used them since I have to break that into two. Back to back.
But we talked about how the Missouri River has been a corridor.
Another thing that
I bet you need to do. Might be about 6 years from online, but
What is that?
Recordings that we know when.
I like that idea though,
but she actually uploaded it online and she talked about it.
but we should warn that.
Oh, yeah.
So like if you need to take videos of your classrooms, do that during school. Or even next time.
Now, see, like this one, I wasn't looking at systems, I was just looking at the one.
And hopefully they won't be like that.
I would have taken that as an option.
Yep.
You know.
And that's the plan.
Well, so for the next time, if they said 7, was she gonna show that?
I just want to give like a brief of what she has. And then for the
Next one.
This wasn't where you could tell that they were there.
But I always get one that I can draw. You can draw better than I can draw. I can guarantee you, but that you can.
I'm surprised you don't have buffalo on here.
You know, that is kind of surprising.
But when we did,
I mean, like, how close it was.
See, that's where we did now.
we had to do a project for our field trip. So I had to interview about, where there's no buffalo here. Or, one series of pictures per year. I did like one picture and forest or.
And then that's kind of how I do it. Storytelling one day.
And this point. We probably don't, you know how normal it is.
So there's these campgrounds that are really creative.
And then
Use their imagination.
Some of
bias.
So, and of course, some people this one campground, horses in it, one didn't know it was good. But we just kind of ignored him.
Wow, the Crow children were sent to a school that Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so Carl Bobby came in and a whole bunch of they fought each other. And then they got smallpox. The court there retreated, they had somebody in the okay. Alright.
So would she become pastor now? How it was on that? Mine is a hat.
Off. It really wasn't What was afraid of typical?
Drawing figures.
I have a question for you that I meant to ask. So I got a thing that says is that something for you or Scotland? Yeah. Well,
Isn't that the one that they
A question.
Yes. Okay. They don't need that.
Usually it shows up
Oh,
as
you
like a
thought it
rod.
was like a.
So I was like, I don't know if I can answer this or not, so I know.
Still see the comment.
Yeah, so I'll talk to everybody about it, we have to do a major report, and just about the future first, and they asked like for feedback and data. So I had to do that, and then, I'm gonna send it out here. But I sent it as a draft, so I thought I'd just put some space between that. So then we'll have a big survey on like what people wanna do next year.
Some of the stuff,
And
how
Mr. Scogan has a lot of ideas.
In the future.
Anyway, I can help you with that or whatever it is that you need to do that.
Yeah, it just,
I don't remember who the wording it was, what I'm doing, there's so many people in here. Okay, the first
Well, yeah, I didn't presentation. I didn't get a project, but just
That's the one I was
I know mine was really short, but
No, it's good.
I was like, government doesn't expect money.
And they're looking at like the timeline, modeling that.
How many acres is the section?
640.
But our immediate family thought that it was turtle mountain.
Okay,
Is there anything else that I might?
It's turtle plant.
They were kind of telling
So
me
you're
about
not mountain now.
for the rest of the spring.
Okay.
But if we can't get her, Danny Phillips from Harvard.
Oh, okay. You would
Okay.
So we have about 1 hours right here.
I wonder if the source too would be the tribal colleges and see like years ago when I went to grad school, there was a lady that she was going to start teaching at St. And she was sharing a lot of, she shared a wealth of information about 501. Helped us learn quite a
Also,
bit.
Shanny mentioned
in some
Maryland, something like that, and she's gonna, that's another option, or maybe we can start next year. I also have some, I found some lessons on like diversity. So there we have options.
Well, you're getting some good drawings.
You're right, these are surprise people, they found out they have to share all this. But I don't have my deed certificate because
that's good, that's still.
and I had to share.
Someone, something or other, but, they change except that they can find, and I want to say Wesley, but I don't know if that's what. Getting here.
Cheers.
Getting on the boat. But we had all these people that came over and because they were outlaws or for whatever, they might not be outlaws, but they didn't want to decide that they were family, just change their names. Yeah, change them when they got here or whatever. And so it's, yeah. I have all these family members that.
Is she going to, are you guys going to do something, flip grid with iPads next time too?
No.
And maybe like have
Give it
them
back.
for them.
Because I have to give it back. First they gave
But we'll
We
have
all had to
maybe
share
like a
these, he's
half
trying to
hour.
share it, and they're all really surprised, like, we don't get one. And then he said, no, I take it back, that's, you're taking it, I want it. And then
So what happens to those of us that do not have a iPad?
I don't either. But I think you can use your phone to do what you're doing. Can't do anything.
Well, if you have your own, if you don't have an Android phone, have a, they'll probably not gonna work.
It works on
No,
phone.
then
I've
they
used
need
it on
a
computer on phone.
a new one.
I guess it is.
Yeah. Good. You got the saving.
But it's not, I mean, even if we can get it done. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna make a couple announcements while you guys are working.
So next week, or next month, we are going to get some technology rolling. So if you have an iPad, if you want to bring it, if you want to have Flipgrid and have it downloaded on it, that would be great. If you don't have an iPad, Mrs. Tubby's going to be bringing her classroom's iPads.
Okay.
So we're going to be making videos, and we're going to be getting lots of information off the tablet for the next 2 understandings.
And the next two sessions, February
Yes.
and March.
Yes, so we're going to learn about Flipgrid and how it next month, and then we're going to come back the following month, and we're going to do some recordings, and we're going to be looking at each other's recordings about what we learned about the understandings.
Mhm.
Okay, it'll be fun. So it's going to be on February 10th at 4 p.m. at the library, because we kind of want to spread out a little bit and
So, right.
use those resources. Library? Yeah, just the library.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, I'm super excited.
Are you?
About Flipgrid?
I just said, I'm like, is this what it sounds like when I assign this stuff to my kids? And I'm like, yes, this is gonna be awesome. And they're like, I'm excited. I'm all in.
How many of you have used Flipgrid before?
I guess.
All right.
So,
So now step-by-step directions, you'll be coming out going, oh.
It'll be fun. And if you give it to the kids, they'll know, like, you don't even have to know how to do it. Just give it to them and they'll know how to do it. So we just made some plans for our spring meetings. We basically have 4 more hours to do. We have 2 more essential understandings, and then we have a 2-hour workshop, but we were thinking about splitting those into 2 1-hour workshops because it might be hard to find like a 2-hour block of time, and that's a long time to sit. And so do you guys think that that's a good idea to split it into 2? Okay, so we basically have February, March, April, and May to do workshops. For this next one, Mrs. Tunby and you are gonna go together. And so do those 2 essential understandings together, do the technology stuff together. And then the next time in March, we're going to do like a little session with some content, maybe on implicit bias stuff. And you will also need technology because we'll do implicit bias tests on like an iPad or a phone. And then we'll do the Flipgrid recording. So the idea behind that is to record something, maybe something in your classroom that you're doing. So you'll have the month of like February and part of March to record something like a lesson that you're doing, something with your students, student work, something like that. Or you can also come to the PLC in March and like record each other talking about the lesson, something that you're doing or something that you've talked to others about if you're not doing something in your classroom. And then the following month in April, we will show those videos and everybody will watch them together. The purpose of that is so we can really show what we've learned through this. We want to really showcase that and what we've gained from it.
Can we opt out of the
Yeah.
video? I mean, I don't care, I'll take a video, but I don't want to be on anybody's video.
And we can like partner up and then video each other instead.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing something in your classroom, maybe you can talk about what you've learned through this if that's not really like in your setting. And you can also just partner and just have one person video, that's fine. And then we're also probably going to have Shani come and speak about some things in the April one. And then the May one is we're still not sure. We might have Danny Phillips come and do some tribal game stuff maybe, something fun. So that one's still kind of open. That's our big plan. He's coming in April 15th for the students, but this is more for us.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering.
As far as I know, we have backup plans too, but, and then, The other thing was I sent out a survey last Friday for you all to fill out, and we have to submit a mid-year report to OPI on the grant, so that's what that's for. So if you could get that done by like the 25th, I can send it all to them. So far, we've gotten some pretty good feedback. We also need to know the stuff you don't like. That's really important too, and we have thick skin, right? We're totally cool with criticism and critiques. So send us everything you think about it. You can take it again if you have other comments. And we'll compile that and send it to them. And then later, I'm gonna send out a survey on doing PD next year. And what we wanna do, we can do something totally different or similar. Mr. Scogan came to our last meeting and he's really interested in doing some things with, what was that thing called? Quantum learning. So he's really interested in doing PD with us, which is really exciting because as far as I know, I don't think we've had opportunities like that with administration in the past. So we're really excited about that, yeah.
Just curious, what is quantum learning?
It is
We had that one.
something, Mrs. Tunby had done it. It's like about like learning theory and how our brains work and stuff like that, I think. So I think it's like really cross-curricular and cross-grade band. And he had done it at his last school. So I think it's exciting that he wants to do something with us and we can support that. And there might be some people in our buildings who aren't excited about it. It might be a mandatory thing, so maybe we can all be the cheerleaders and get really excited about it so that they'll be excited too.
Learning theory, I think, is fun.
Yeah, I think it would apply to all of us, for sure, so. But if you have other ideas, put them on the survey. I'll probably send it out in a couple weeks, so we have some separation between the two. Do you guys have any other comments about what we're doing?
Well, I just like it because it's giving me an opportunity to learn something that I wouldn't do on my own. And so and I appreciate all the work people do put together. So that's why it works for me.
And thank you, everyone. I knew mine was short, but I didn't think we'd want to get super in-depth in the policy. I took a class one semester that was just about it, and some days my brain was just flat out drained with 2 hours of work. I was just,
Well, it depends on your age level too. Your elementary treaty policy or once you get to high school, when I'm a freshman in Montana history, then we can delve into it more.
Well, I think you linked Jim Thorpe's idea to treaties that was mandated that they go to school to get a trade. That
Sure.
was a good point to bring out. So that was, and for your younger kids, that would be kind of cool to talk about Jim Thorpe. They would recognize maybe, the athletic skill he had and how that developed. So, no, that was good. Did a nice job.
And how that treaty applied to him, like personally.
Personally,
Yeah.
yeah, that was good. He did a nice job, so.
and that's one that they only send one book of each, like
Oh, one copy of each?
only one copy each, so that one came from Longfellow.
We also will probably have around $2,000 as part of the grant to spend on like curricular resources and things like that. So I think Mrs. Tunby is going to use some of it for the next one, and she's going to have like single copies for everybody, maybe or something. And then if you want to order more of them, we have money for that. So be thinking about, we need to spend it all in May. So be thinking about what we might spend that on.
Well, there's always, whether they're OPI things, there's always Native American produced books that we can, Kim and I can add to the collections in the library, so.
And if you ever look up the link of the one that I did, the extension activity, I do have a book, Keepers of the Earth. And I first bought it years ago because when my dad was a coach, the boys from Lodgegrass told him about the little people, and they happened to be in there. And then it actually came up as an extension activity idea. And of course, I can't find where I had that book. I organized my books this year when I moved, and I don't know where I put it. But if anyone ever wants to borrow it, they're welcome. Yeah.
They want it tomorrow, Sean.
Mr. Hopperson's been doing feeding too,
Oh, really?
so I don't know if, I'm trying to think what period's still doing it, but I might go flip grid,
Yes.
video it, a little bit of it.
Maybe we could even like bring some in here.
Sure, yeah, he's got a ton of loom, yeah.
That would be in, probably the April one.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be good. It would also be neat, if there were any students who would want to come and, like, we were talking about Jessica, who went on the run. So if there's any students that would want to come and talk to us about stuff, that would be neat too.
Sure, so it's got some space.
Even if it's like a 5-minute, you know.
If you
Tell you
look,
some
look really hard on that had the big thing, the online thing on the run, they had like 14 or 15 pictures. And if you look really hard, you can find Carter.
Really?
But you could never find, because he's on the edge and he's got his hood up and he's got a red sweatshirt on with the hood up and he's got his jacket, because I checked with Jake, but you can never find Jessica because she's always in the middle of the crowd and she was so short. They couldn't see her. But if you look really hard in 1 or 2 pictures, you can find Carter.
One thing that I really liked is that we had a lot of different people present. And I think we got a lot of different grade levels and subject areas and perspectives. And it also kind of lessened the workload on everybody, because then you just each focused on one thing. So I don't know what Mr. Scobin has planned, like if we did the quantum learning thing, I don't know what he would plan, but I think he might do something that's mandatory. He also talked about curriculum mapping, and I think a lot of us are excited about that, but last year we didn't do it this year because Jake said that it should be everybody, it should be like mandatory, otherwise it's not worth doing. So I think he's planning to talk to the calendar committee. Who's on the calendar committee? And then Mr. Robinson, the third one. So I think he might talk about working some PD into our calendar, which we've talked about for a long time. So hopefully we can all be like in agreement about that and supportive of it if that's what we want. And that's some of the questions on the survey that are coming out will ask you that too. And if we're not all in agreement, that's fine, but hopefully we can have some kind of consensus and be supportive.
We talked about that through the technology committee years and years ago about doing something like 2 Wednesdays a month. We get out at 2:15 and then from 2:30 to 3:30 there would be mandatory PD things for the teachers, but it would mean to make up that time, you know, we had to add like little minutes to other classes and whatever. So I mean,
So did that not go anywhere then, or
it didn't go anywhere. No,
were people against it?
I don't remember. I know that something like that has been talked about. It was way back when Dave Mann was an elementary principal, so it's been quite a while ago.
Something like that in one of the BDA meetings last year. And some people were kind of for it and other people were like, I'm not putting in extra time for PD. Like, they were just not, yeah. I mean, probably depends on what the topic is and if you feel it can apply, I guess. I mean, that's how I feel about it.
I told Mr. Spoken that the calendar committee is it's a nicety that the administration does for us. We don't have to, but we usually sit down and kind of work out something. Never had the superintendent propose a calendar that I'm aware of. So, but I said, you know, you're more than welcome to throw it in the hat. So it's been kind of the principals kind of deal, but ultimately they and the board makes the decision. So
like the committee proposes like 2 or 3 and then the board?
usually it's 2, yeah, there's usually 2 choices and we'll have one from Mr. Scobin and one that the committee can, Mr. Breitbach can work on, and, or maybe that's it, maybe it's agreed upon that that's the only one and we run with that, but.
So if we change the schedule, would that also be a calendar committee thing, if they added a couple minutes to the day or something?
Like if we came earlier?
Yeah.
That would be an administrative.
That's it.
That's one thing. Yeah.
So maybe there's a couple ways to look at it, maybe it could be.
And he's done that too,
or-
he's done if we started 2 minutes earlier.
Or ended 2 minutes later or something. And maybe it would be a once a month or an hour thing, that would maybe be as hard to add to our days, that would be maybe 3 minutes a day. But it would look different for, if we were doing curriculum mapping, that would mean that we would work in small groups probably. It wouldn't make sense to do a big meeting together, so. And it would probably be us managing it. We probably wouldn't have an administrator.
I would like us to change our wording in our CBA to 187 days contractual without specifying 180 bucks in seat states instead of PIR.
Oh, and then they would work out the minutes for student contact time. And I think we have a little wiggle room with parent-teacher conferences. We could do like 4 hours instead of 5 or
Yes,
something.
we talked about that.
Maybe it's done earlier, or start later.
That's
That's true.
elementary, that's
That's
getting 23
a good
kids.
point.
And that was part with elementary.
Right.
You do it with the high school, but you couldn't.
Right.
Unless you split it up into 2 or 3
Right.
grades.
That's enough, right? During Halloween would be the
Right.
Sugar's a little rough.
Our
Yeah.
gift is
I would
Halloween's
say.
on Saturday this year.
That's all the girls.
Like dress up week, Halloween, conferences. It's just like,
They're excited and that's always fun, but they can. What was the other holiday that's when we get wound up for?
Valentine's
Friday or
Day.
Saturday. I saw a
Just
teacher's
say
guide or
I
something.
wanted
It
to
was a
celebrate
meeting
Martin
that-
Christmas Day, Luther King Day.
Yeah.
Where's our celebration? I'm like, what are you gonna talk about? No, we're not gonna have a party. Melinda thought we should have cupcakes and things for Dr. Martin Luther King to like have a party. And I was just like, nope. But we did last year. I said, nope. I said, I couldn't.
Like maybe you dreamt that?
I was like, and which actually Sophia had brought, she was her sponsor, so I was like, see, there you go. There's our celebration. Yeah. She's like, but we're not gonna take like time off, like other time, like, no.
I wonder if they could get out an hour earlier on parent-teacher conference days, like an hour.
Some of those button seat time things that you have to do.
Which, yeah, she was, but no, she just wanted to play around, like, no.
And then it's like in the middle of the week. Yeah, I could really feel it, Thursday and Friday.
And I had every 5 or 6
I think we got out a little earlier this year.
Third grade.
We started half an hour earlier, which was nice.
For what? Wood jump and.
Because I think we got
That's Ashley Morris, so into Carrie. After class, I've been gone every day since Carrie started.
So we have
That's, I had to do that.
And then I was talking to
She missed 9 days.
she always did themselves, and then she's gotta go around showing everybody her phone, and she's
I
just
did
gonna
get her
the units are right on the little black thing on the door. So I said, I can't do it. But I almost had it
I won't even bother getting it after that one comes out. Have you seen Lisa Gil's videos from this?
Yes, I love watching. I would like to have her.